Hello and welcome to week 2 of the Mount Silver Draft League. My name is Scribbles. I'm coach of the Colorado Cobalians. Coming off a week 1 win over Dark Soul Project. Let's keep on coming. We're going up against Unyeah and the Mewcastle United. This is our second week of out of conference. After this, we're going to go through a grueling run through our conference schedule, and then we'll have another familiar face in Adamant, who you'll remember from last season in Mystery Egg Division, and then a couple more conference matches. So just to kind of give you the larger perspective. Coming into the battle against Unyeah here, and the Mewcastle United, looking over his team, I feel like you say this every week, but there's always a lot of threats. 8-man drafts, you're not going to have a lot of kind of freebies or Pokemon you don't need to prep for. Going down the list, Hydreigon, terrifying mixed attacker, to be honest. Really good choice scarfer, can run specs. I don't think I've ever seen a banded set. I don't think it really has that great of a physical move pool, but it has some tech that it can use. It does get Dragon Dance now. It does get Nasty Plot. I think I had Nasty Plot before. So some Nasty Plot sets are always concerning. Just amazing coverage. Really, really difficult to predict with sets. I don't think it actually got that much worse without Z moves, which is scary. Usually Pokemon with really good coverage got worse when they lost Z moves, but I don't think Hydreigon's one of those Pokemon. I think it's still really, really good. If anything, it got better because it doesn't have to deal with Z move coverage in the form of fighting or fairy or things like that. It also has pivoting and defog just on top of everything. So really a jack of all trades, similar to Jirachi, but it's much more threatening in my opinion. So definitely have to watch out for that. You can see on my list of Pokemon over off to the right there that I think he's going to bring Hydreigon number 1 on that list. I think Hydreigon's coming. Next Pokemon on the list, Melmetal. Melmetal is a Pokemon that I don't have much experience with in draft. Don't have much experience with in general. I've never interacted with a Melmetal in the Pokemon world. Never gotten it in Pokemon Let's Go. Didn't get it in Let's Go Pikachu by extension. This will be the first time I've ever seen one in the wild, so to speak. It is a very good physical attacker. Has a decent physical move pool. Pretty good, actually. No special defense, no speed. It's exploitable because of those defenses, but it is very threatening because of its offensive abilities and coverage and things like that. Grimmsnarl, another new Pokemon, great support, prankster ability, lots of support options. One of the few good dark Pokemon, I talked about that last week. I don't think there's a ton of good dark Pokemon in the format currently. It also has Fairy Stab, both generally from the physical side. I don't think its special move pool is that great. Its special stats aren't that great. Comments that you see would be like Dual Screens, Taunts, Will-O-Wisp, and then just a little bit of physical coverage, so it's just not completely locked down when it can't use status moves. For the matchup against my team in particular, Screens is annoying. I don't really have good ways of bypassing them or getting through them or dealing enough damage to overwhelm them. I have Pokemon that are good at dealing damage, but some of them, outside of Landorus, I really don't have anything that is strong enough to just force its way through Screens. So could be a concern there. Something to look out for. Another really good priority mon too. It's got a lot of options. The prankster not only, but also physical attacking options. Next Pokemon on the list, another new Pokemon. So Unyeah went kind of deep on the new ones, trying to get some experience with the new Pokemon, which I can definitely respect. Rillaboom. Rillaboom is like Tapu Bulu, but no fairy typing. Probably better otherwise, I would say. It gets Grassy Surge. We're allowing unreleased abilities for new Pokemon in this draft league. So it gets Grassy Surge to boost Drum Beating and Wood Hammer and any other grass attacks. Has really good offense, decent bulk, kind of middling speed. It basically is Tapu Bulu without fairy typing and just a slightly different move pool. I don't know much else to say about it other than that. It's definitely a threat. Grass type is something that I have ways of dealing with, but it can be annoying for me. My wall core, if you want to call it that, is definitely Weezing and Vaporeon. Vaporeon for special and Weezing for physical. So it's kind of lucky for me that Rillaboom isn't like an amazing special attacker. So if we think about something like Serperior would be really difficult for me to deal with because I don't have a special wall that can very easily pivot in and out off of Superior, whereas Rillaboom is just a little bit easier because I have Weezing there available to deal with that to some degree. Another new Pokemon next on the list, Galarian Corsola. I think this has been one of the kind of like stars of the early format here in Mount Silver. It's put in a ton of work in a lot of the replays I've watched. People just aren't bringing things that can kill it for whatever reason. It's insanely bulky with Eviolite. It has a lot of really good tech that makes it tough to kill between Strength Sap, Will-O-Wisp. I don't think it just gets straight Recover, but you don't really need straight Recover. Its HP isn't very high, so Strength Sap is very, very good recovery. And I think it's probably won like 3 or 4 games just on its own. Come in, it's set up rocks, it's toxic something, and then just spammed Will-O-Wisp and Strength Sap until the opponent was dead. So definitely need to prep multiple ways to kill this so that you don't get embarrassed by a goddamn piece of coral. Next on the list, Rotom Heat. Rotom Heat has a great matchup with my team. Levitate frustrates Landorus. I have rock coverage obviously for it, but it's still frustrating. Fire type is somewhat difficult for a lot of my Pokemon, especially my own hazard removal in the form of Serena has trouble with that. Fire electric coverage in general, I don't have a resist to that combination. Thinking. No. So that's troublesome. Difficult to kind of work around that. It's not immensely threatening from an offensive perspective, but all the Rotom forms did get Nasty Plot. And its speed tier is such that, Choice Scarf puts it right about where it wants to be in terms of my team. So something to definitely think about is most reliable hazard remover, which if I want to go for hazards, it has Levitate, so basically comes in, aside from Stealth Rock, for free to remove them. The primary means of hazards for my team ends up being Toxic Spikes a lot of the time. Because my Stealth Rockers, which maybe we'll get to when I go through my team a little bit, I'm not in love with my Stealth Rockers at the moment. Next player on the team, Vaporeon. I have a Vaporeon, they have a Vaporeon. It's frustrating to deal with. Great special wall, special attack's good, Wish Passer, can do a lot of things. I like Vaporeon. I think Vaporeon's a solid Pokemon. And then Ditto. So Ditto is like simultaneously the easiest and hardest Pokemon to prep for. You need to make sure that you don't beat yourself. Like you can't get in a position where you would lose to yourself, or you will. And that's straightforward enough when you're doing team building. But while you're playing, it can be difficult. And oftentimes you won't be able to build 6 Pokemon that are useless when turned around against you, because generally if your Pokemon are useless when turned around against you, they probably just weren't that good to begin with. Certain circumstances you might be able to pull it off, but generally you can't. So you have to be really careful with your positioning in game. It doesn't really do much else other than that. It's not always going to be Scarf. Sometimes you'll see niche items like in VGC I've run into Quick Claw Ditto. It can be Choice in terms of specs or banned, but that's super risky because that you need to switch into a physical or a special attacker to make those work. I think Choice Scarf is really the only realistic option on Ditto, but I suppose Quick Claw is in theory usable. Next Pokemon, Blastoise. Blastoise got a huge buff this gen with Shell Smash. It makes it a super potent sweeper, and something you need to keep an eye out for, and you need to kind of prevent from setting up, or if it does set up, you need to have a way to answer it. Fortunately for me, Vaporeon's a great answer to Blastoise. That's not to say that, I have a Vaporeon on my team, Blastoise is dealt with. You'd probably want a little bit more than that to deal with Blastoise, because it has Dark Pulse, so it can flinch you down. If Vaporeon gets weakened, then it just needs a chance to set up and you lose. I don't have any priority on the team I brought, which is a concern. So there's a lot of things to keep in mind with Blastoise. And the final Pokemon, Ferroseed. Great hazard setter. Well, great. It's a good hazard setter. He gets all the hazards, aside from Toxic Spikes. So it gives them a niche utility to be able to run Spikes if they wanted to. Other than that, I don't anticipate Ferroseed coming to this matchup. And it's not because it has a bad matchup, just because there's so many better Pokemon against me. So the 6 I anticipate coming, Hydreigon, Melmetal, Galarian Corsola, Grimmsnarl, Ditto, and Rotom Heat. And so my team coming into this, what I was trying to build around was essentially taking advantage of Neutralizing Gas and Toxic Spikes to spread status across my opponent's team, and then using my 2 potent offensive threats in Landorus and Zeraora to sweep through, with backup in the form of Vaporeon and Houndoom to give me switch-ins to some of his nastiest stuff. Dark-type attacks from Hydreigon, I have a switch-in the form of Houndoom. The Fire-type attacks from Fire-type and Steel-type attacks from Rotom and Melmetal, respectively, I can switch into Vaporeon. And then Wigglytuff's a rocker because I cannot, for the life of me, figure out a way to make Jirachi work. So it's maybe this battle he has a particularly bad matchup. You're going up against a pretty bulky Steel type in Melmetal, and then 2 very threatening Dark types, and then an Electric Fire type. None of which are particularly appealing matchups for Jirachi, so maybe it's just another bad matchup, but it's 2 bad matchups in a row, so I think I floated out after the match if anyone was interested in trading Jirachi, so offer's still on the table. I'll have to see how I'm feeling about him going forward. Anyway, into the individual sets. Galarian Weezing, max physical defense, and then the HP and special defense, I think if I remember right, was for a 2-hit KO from... or it was to survive Specs Hydreigon Dark Pulse. And then enough speed to speed creep uninvested Vaporeon. The uninvested Vaporeon was to perhaps get off a Pain Split or something like that. With Vaporeon's huge HP, a Pain Split is very beneficial to me. And then I had enough EVs to hit that Hydreigon investment, just kind of playing around between HP and special defense with maximizing HP. So this is the minimum amount, the maximum amount of HP and minimum special defense that can survive that while hitting the speed and max defense. So that's why that investment is there. Will-O-Wisp is to hit Melmetal on switch-in or when we're up against each other. After a burn, I think I also have a good chance of surviving Double Iron Bash. I don't remember the calc exactly. So again, I'm about a week behind on recordings. I'm going to be caught up after this. So week 3, I'll be right after, and it'll all still be fresh, but a little rusty here. So hopefully I remember all this. Strange Steam gives me a way to hit Grimmsnarl or Hydreigon. It does a lot to Hydreigon. Neutralizing Gas also works to block Prankster, and I think I speed creep uninvested Grimmsnarl as well, which is the really convenient with Vaporeon and uninvested Grimmsnarl being right at the same speed. So if it's an uninvested Grimmsnarl with Prankster won't work. The taunt won't get off, and I'll be able to get a Toxic Spike. Neutralizing Gas also eliminates Levitate from Hydreigon and Rotom, so them switching in with Toxic Spike on the ground means that they get poisoned. So a lot of utility with Neutralizing Gas. Black Touch for longevity. The HP is also... that's right, the HP is also a leftovers number +1 to minimize Stealth Rock. Yay for like micro improvements to sets. Pain Split I talked about earlier, hopefully just get HP back. Pretty simple set otherwise. And that's Abracadabra, who is apparently one of the evil henchmen against Flash. I'm having trouble with DC, so if somebody can help me out with DC nicknames, like, hit me up. Next Pokemon is Landorus. Professor Zoom here. This is enough speed for Hydreigon, max attack, and then just a little dumped in HP. Earth Power, Rock Slide, U-Turn, Life Orb, Sheer Force. So the only thing I'm actually taking Life Orb recoil from is U-Turn, and Gravity. So Gravity gives me a way to sweep the opposing team, with the exception of Ditto. So I have to be very careful. If I activate Gravity and Ditto switches in, the good news is I'll have the Life Orb, so my damage output will be slightly higher. I want to be somewhat careful with this. So this is a set that's somewhat designed that it can't beat itself, right? Earth Power, U-Turn, Rock Slide can't do much to Landorus, provided Gravity isn't in effect. Once Gravity goes into effect, I'm in a bit more trouble, so I'll have to keep an eye out for that. Gravity does give me the potential to sweep late game though. If I can get that up, Rock Slide allows me to hit Rotom, even though Earth Power does more. Basically, I can run through his team, save Vaporeon, who I'll need to chip down, and potentially a priority Blastoise or any AV Pokemon. I guess Rillaboom I can't really get through either, but U-Turn's going to do a lot to Rillaboom. Next up is Flash himself, Barry Allen. Barry Allen is the one true Flash. Wally West is a joke, so anyone can fight me about that. This set here, enough speed for Hydreigon. So this is, yeah, both of them at 325. So this is for Timid Hydreigon. Thunderbolt, Aura Sphere, Volt Switch, Calm Mind. This set is designed that it can't lose to Ditto. Calm Mind, double electric means that Ditto switches in and really just sits there and can click Aura Sphere, and that's about it, which is non-stab into what's probably +1 Zeraora at that point, with a ton of special defense investment. And I have more HP than Ditto, so that's another way you can kind of build around Ditto, is just to heavily invest in HP. In this case, I'm putting extra investment to HP, minimizing Life Orb recoil, like another micro optimization that you can do. This means I take 31 Life Orb recoil because it's 5/10 rounded down, which is a little bit better than otherwise. So hit my speed investment, hit a Life Orb number, rest and special defense. Pretty simple. Thunderbolt Volt Switch can do a lot to his team. Save Rillaboom and Melmetal and Rotom Heat. And then Fighting Coverage kind of picks up neutral is super effective on the rest of his team. So if I can clear out... I mean, even Rotom Heat's not a huge concern. Since I'm special, I don't care about Volt Switch, and Fighting Coverage will do a decent amount, especially at +1. So I think this set has a really good chance to do some work this game. Getting Aura Sphere instead of Focus Blast is huge for Zeraora. I love picking that move up. Don't have to rely on Focus Blast, which is amazing. Even with the kind of combo with Gravity Focus Blast, which I at some points considered on Lando, I think Aura Sphere is just a godsend for Zeraora overall. Captain Cold, another B-list Flash villain. Here we're going with max defense, max HP, a little token amount of speed into Vaporeon. The only reason I went with this investment is that Vaporeon kind of needs to switch into some of the Pokemon on his team, and a lot of them end up being more physically based. It's never going to be a switch in for Rillaboom, but it needs to be able to switch into Melmetal. It takes Hydreigon's attacks pretty well as is, with a huge HP number and really good special defense. So the physical defense felt pretty good. This actually set was a suggestion from PZZ, so I appreciate the suggestion. I initially dismissed it, but then I came back to it because I thought it was good. Scald, Toxic Wish, Heal Bell, annoying Pokemon. I think the Rocky Helmet is to switch into Double Iron Bash and deal a massive amount of damage to Melmetal is the hopes there. Other than that, it's a really standard Vaporeon set. Nothing too crazy there. Black Flash here. Black Flash is the Grim Reaper for Flashes, the people of the Speed Force. Sure. Dark Pulse, Fire Blast, Toxic, Destiny Bond. Just let's spread some more Toxic. Pasho Berry gives me a super emergency check to, I suppose, like a Blastoise that sets up or something. I don't know. I couldn't think of another item that did anything, and he's got a couple water types, and some of his Pokemon have water coverage, so sure, Pasho Berry, whatever. I'm hoping just to get off a Toxic, and then Dark against his team is pretty good. This is one of the answers to Galarian Corsola, so I kind of want to keep this alive so that I don't lose to that, because losing to that sucks. And then this is also my switch into Rotom when I feel that a Fire-type attack might come, or to force my opponent to not use the Fire-type attack as often. So we have 2 Electric immunities, 1 Fire immunity, and a Fire resist. So hopefully between the 4 of them, Rotom is a bit neutered. Investment, that speed is for modest Hydreigon, so I outspeed that. I think I take I don't even remember. I think I take Earth Power from Hydreigon, from Modest Specs Hydreigon, or something like that at this investment. And then can presumably Destiny Bond the following turn or something along those lines. Nothing too crazy with this set. And then finally on the team, I have Wigglytuff. This Wigglytuff had a better matchup than Jirachi. I needed a rocker. I brought Wigglytuff again. This gives me a switch into Dark Pulse, or Dark type attacks in general, which is badly needed on a team going up against Hydreigon, who can just spam Dark Pulse from Specs or Scarf sets. I have another Wish Passer, which is nice. It can kind of keep my Pokemon healthy. Really important to keep Vaporeon and Weezing healthy throughout this match. Probably keep Houndoom healthy as well, so that Rotom isn't free to click those fire type attacks. A leftovers number, so again, divisible by 16 plus 1. Speed, I sped prep Vaporeon / uninvested Grimmsnarl again here, which is a lot of speed investment for a Wigglytuff. And then just as much special defense as I could take. Dazzling Gleam, Stab from base 85 special attack did a lot to Hydreigon. There's obviously investments that could survive it, but it does a lot. And then other than that, it's just another Pokemon with Toxic and Stealth Rock. Like, overall, this is a pretty toxic team. Toxic Spikes. These two sweep at the end of the game. Toxic. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Looking forward to the match. Alright, welcome to the battle. So looking at the team preview here, the only difference between the expected Mons and what Unyeah actually ended up bringing was Rillaboom over Rotom Heat. It's not too disruptive to my overall game plan. Similar to last week, I think, basically. Maybe even a bit less disruptive than last week. So last week, we were going up against Dark Soul, and I expected to bring Volcarona and didn't end up bringing Volcarona, so some of the sets on my team didn't really make sense against a non-Volcarona build. In this case, it's similar. I have some tech to deal with Rotom Heat, but in this case, it's not going to be a problem. If you think about it, Houndoom was a switch into Rotom Heat. It's maybe not a switch into Rillaboom, but it ends up being a good offensive check to Rillaboom. Vaporeon wasn't a switch into Rotom Heat, and it's not a switch into Rillaboom. So the roles are still kind of similar there. I guess Lando is I have two electric immunities that aren't really doing a ton, with my opponent not having any stab electric types. But there's always coverage and things like that, so do force some plays on my opponent. As far as leads are concerned for this match, I think Lando and Zeraora are late game Pokemon for me here. They're not going to be the lead for me ever. I don't want them to be matched up against an opposing Scarfer, who could deal a lot of damage to them and make them essentially compromise their ability to win in the late game. Vaporeon matches up really bad against Rillaboom. It's not great against Ditto as the lead. I can just get Toxic there, potentially. I can pick up a status from a lot of his other team. I have no way of getting up hazards with Vaporeon. It just doesn't really do a lot as a lead. Doesn't even really pivot out that well. Houndoom is really similar. It's just not going to accomplish the things that you want from a lead. So that put me down to Wigglytuff or Galarian Weezing, both of which are hazard setters, both of which can do some things depending on what the opponent does. Wigglytuff is a little bit tougher matchup against Rillaboom and Melmetal, the two physical attackers who could potentially one-shot it, thereby preventing rocks and putting me down a Mon with no utility out of that Mon. So Galarian Weezing felt like the obvious lead to me in this scenario. Potentially also get to show off the tech of speed creeping a uninvested Grimmsnarl and getting off a Toxic Spike before I get taunted or something along those lines. So that's what I end up leading with. Unyeah leads with the Grimmsnarl, and I'm like, perfect. Neutralizing Gas, which he knows about because it tells you in the chat, but who reads the chat? Will prevent Prankster from working, even if he reads the chat, like some insane person. He'll probably think he's faster than me, because who would speed invest a Weezing? Because I would. And all that works, but he's faster than me because he's speed invested, and taunt hits me, and I de-spike into a taunt and look like an idiot. So great start for me. you know, in the grand scheme of things, fairly ineffectual. Had I just gone for an attack here, it would have put him in a very difficult position, as you can start to see from the damage output here. It leads up to the light screen, which, fair, I guess. Technically, Weezing has higher attack than special attack, technically, but has a much better special move pool, so it's probably the right move. Just salty that you picked the right one first. So it only does 34%. So this shows that had I led with the Strange Team on turn 1, I would have been able to pick up the 2-hit KO regardless of what screen he went for. So it would have kept him to one screen or forced him to switch out. But unfortunately, that's not the world we live in for me. So he gets up both screens, I get off the second Strange Team, and my taunt runs out, and he's got both screens up. So he could taunt me again to try and prevent Toxic Spikes, but he dies to Strange Team, so I don't think he's going to go for that play. I think he's probably going to pivot out here. Hydreigon switch into a Strange Team is not a play. That is an insane play. Rillaboom switching in. Rillaboom can't really threaten me that much. It has ground attacks. I am very defensive, like very heavily defense invested. So I don't know if that's the greatest play overall. Corsola doesn't do anything. I just get my Toxic Spikes up. Ditto's obnoxious, but I can deal with Ditto switching in. I think the only two plays that make really any sense for my opponent is Melmetal or Rillaboom, and Rillaboom only if it has grass coverage. So I go ahead and switch out here into Lando, anticipating one of those two. And I get that play right, so that's kind of a good prediction there. Getting Toxic Spikes up is okay there. He's not going to bring in Hydreigon, who's his only defogger. So Toxic Spikes is probably a pretty reasonable play there. I like this play because of the momentum it gains me. Unfortunately, behind the light screen, Melmetal actually does survive Life Orb, Sheer Force, Earth Power. It's not by a lot. Can check here. The reason it survives is because I am actually very, very heavily physically invested. And then on top of that, it looks like it just survives in general. So light screen, good. And I would anticipate a Melmetal being HP invested at the very least. And it has really good HP. So Melmetal does survive this, but I do have the Vaporeon Rocky Helmet tech. So I'm going to go ahead and U-turn out. There's not really any risk in staying in. Like a Choice Scarf, Melmetal hits 250 uninvested, so let's say Timid, it's 274. So it literally cannot outspeed me. So I get free damage with U-turn, break a Focus Sash, whatever. Get to scout for doubles, so this seems fine to me. So U-turn out, bringing in Vaporeon, taking a Life Orb recoil. And my opponent goes for Ice Punch. So good play on their part. Ice Punch, I guess it kind of covers the Zeraora switch in. I do have a couple Steel Resists. 3 Steel Resists actually, so Ice Punch is probably a better neutral hit. And Thunder Punch would be a pretty insane play. So I felt safe going to Vaporeon. Really was hoping to catch the double Iron Bash and get the 2 Rocky Helmet pings off on Melmetal. But one's good, and the crit actually confirms for me that he is choice banned, which is really important for me to be able to play around now and later in the game. So knowing that my opponent's choice banned here, I'm a little bit more comfortable just either firing off an attack or not having to worry about him switching up to Thunder Punch or something along those lines. So in this case, I double out to Weezing, so that is an actual double, unlike previous switches. And he switches to Rillaboom. So I went to Weezing because I wanted to start getting up hazards, and I thought there's no way he's going to stay in and just keep clicking Ice Punch because I get too much momentum with either Wish or Scald and starting to weaken him. Rillaboom made sense as a switch in there to give him something that threatens Vaporeon, so if I just fire off a Wish, I don't get to heal back up for free. And then other than that, as far as a switch into Vaporeon, it's somewhat difficult for my opponent. Ditto's a good switch in, but if I just fire off Toxic on a Predict, pretty bad for my opponent. Galarian Corsola, you don't really want it to get burned. Rillaboom, I'm surprised switched in. You don't want it to get burned either, but I guess you want to take advantage of screens while you have them up. and it definitely does force Vaporeon out for me. You're a little surprised here to not see Grassy Surge. I talked to Unyeah about it after the game and apparently wasn't aware that you're allowed to use unreleased abilities on new Pokemon. Just kind of another interesting little wrinkle in the rules this year. I think there's a lot of interesting wrinkles in the rules this year. So good for me. I don't think it mattered as the game went on. If anything, the passive healing, maybe it helps me. I don't know. I don't want to speculate on that. We'll see as it goes through the battle. So in this position, with Wheezing in against Rillaboom behind a screen, I've done the damage calc here, and I'm safe against Earthquake, which is the most damaging thing it can go for. Not because I have Levitate, obviously, but it's non-stab, and I have a ridiculous amount of defense investment. So I'm not really being threatened by anything here. So I want to nerf this Pokemon's damage output specifically, and I also suspect that a switch into one of his other physical attackers, either Melmetal or Grimmsnarl, is pretty likely. So I fire off a Will-O-Wisp as kind of a mid-ground play, I suppose. I could have gotten up a T-Spike or something along those lines. One of the drawbacks from neutralizing gas, and there's a couple of these that come up, even though I specifically said you got to be really careful with team building against Ditto, is a non-neutralizing gas or non-levitate Wheezing. If Ditto switches in on Wheezing and it's not levitating, I'm pretty sure it clears T-Spikes. It switches in, gets poisoned, and then clears T-Spikes. Suffice it to say, I wasn't sure in the battle, and I'm still not sure. So that's a potential issue that I have to look out for. But regardless, I fire off the Will-O-Wisp here. I want to cripple one of his physical attackers. He just happens to U-turns. I don't damage calc this, which was a mistake. You see 6% and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, quad resisted, whatever. Had I damage calc that, I would have found out that was banded. That was a banded Rillaboom that did 6% to Wheezing. That'll come up later. So I fire off the Will-O-Wisp. Luckily I connect on Melmetal. At this point, Melmetal can't kill Wheezing, even if he's banded, even with double Iron Bash. So I take this as an opportunity to go ahead and get up a Toxic Spike. And, I can see that I don't get crit. Everything works out. I know he's banded, so I have a pretty free switch into Vaporeon here, who will take a double Iron Bash very comfortably. And I also finally get to reveal my little tech of, which, he already saw the Rocky Helmet, but this is what it's supposed to do, is do 50% to him. And then I get a free Wish here. I assume that's what I do, yeah. So Grimmsnarl comes back in to potentially set screens back up. He goes for Reflect first here. Scald kills. I think he died anyway, so he just went with the most useful screen. And Rillaboom comes back in. The Toxic Spike's on the ground. You can't see it, but it's there. Had I damage calc this, I would have had a pretty good sense for how much his attacks were going to do. And, maybe I don't make this play. But I feel that he's in a pretty awkward position to go for a Grass attack because Wheezing's still alive, and I'm under some mistaken perspective that Wheezing might survive an attack because I didn't damage calc, and I thought maybe he was like drum beating and not banded. So I stayed in with Vaporeon here to fire off a Wish, and he goes for knockoff. So this is my second chance of 2 to do a damage calc and figure out like, oh, that's banded damage. Oh, I should be careful. But I don't. So I get the Wish off, and he switches out because he's locked into knockoff, and he's not going to be able to kill Vaporeon. So I basically get a free attack here. I switch out to Houndoom, which again is hilarious because I think Houndoom survives. Because I don't think Rillaboom's banded. Houndoom would survive a knockoff, obviously. If he was Grassy Surge and he went for Woodhammer, I think I'd probably just die here. But none of that came to pass. I bring in Vaporeon, or bring in Houndoom, and we're in this position here. Houndoom through a Reflect kills Melmetal with Dark Pulse. So I just go for that because it gives me a good neutral hit. I don't want to lock into a fire move against a Ditto switching in or something along those lines. So, or I don't want to click a dark move with Ditto switching in, potentially getting that boost. So I just go for Dark Pulse. It picks up the KO. The crit didn't matter. It died anyway. Melmetal has trash special defense. So Hydreigon comes in. Here, the position, I've EV'd Houndoom to survive any of Hydreigon's attacks, sort of. I mean, I think any of them. I don't think, like, Bandit Earthquake, I don't think kills. Specs Earth Power from Modest doesn't kill. So I'm just going to get a Toxic off here and assume that I'll go to basically no health. Ends up going for Surf, so I look like some sort of demigod having a Pasho Berry on my Houndoom in this exact position. Realistically, the Pasho Berry was a throwaway item. I could survive the Earth Power from here. So the Toxic was hopefully always going to happen for me. And I go ahead and get that off. And then the switch out to Vaporeon here, anticipating another Surf, assuming this is choice locked, or basically not assuming it's going to hit a dark move. So Surf, heal up. Again, I'm looking like a god here, but these aren't predictions. These are really straightforward plays. So Hydreigon's, it ends up being not Scarfed. He turns out. I have a Vaporeon in against Rillaboom, and I fire off another Wish. If I suspected that this was banded, I think the odds of me wishing are basically 0. But again, I did not think he was banded for whatever reason, because I'm not calcing. So I go to Wheezing, hoping that I can take a drum beating, because that's what he's going to go for. Ends up going for a Wood Hammer, and it kills me. I'm like, oh, okay, well, he took a little bit of recoil. Houndoom survives. The Orlando can switch in because it'll outspeed this Rillaboom. If he's Choice Scarf, I take the Wood Hammer because there's no grassy terrain. So I can switch in here, get a free U-turn off, and just basically determine if he's not Scarf. So I think what had been going through my head was like, oh, he's Scarf. That's what's happening. And I was kind of obsessed with that, or at least I got caught in my head because he'd already revealed banded Melmetal, and I didn't anticipate double ban. So I go into Landorus, and I double out into Houndoom, because, again, I think he's Scarf. And I basically am just like, oh, I'll just milk some recoil off of him. Houndoom dies. I thought this was going to be a roll, because he wasn't banded. That's what I thought. So I'm an idiot, basically. This was what... Remember we talked about the previous plays where I'm like, oh, he looks like he's competent and understands how to play Pokemon. And then we have these turns, and you realize it. So I die here. This is a really bad one. I go into Wigglytuff. Sure. Wigglytuff doesn't die to non-banded Rillaboom. And I can get up Stealth Rock, and that does, like 10 damage to his team. That's pretty good. But no, I died to banded Wood Hammer. And so I just threw away 2 differential and potentially the game. Depending on how the last few turns go. The amazing Corsola, I go Zeraora. Zeraora, at this point I realized that Heal Bell for Vaporeon, used against me by Ditto, could also be pretty concerning. And Zeraora could pivot out against anything on my opponent's team, because I knew Hydreigon wasn't Scarf. I knew if he switched in Ditto, I could pivot out into Lando, or I could just get some damage off on it with Aura Sphere, and I was going to basically... I don't think I win the 1v1, but I get him low enough that he's basically in range of anything. And then Corsola, as his last Pokemon, this gave me at least a neutral Mon in. You can see that I've let pretty much my entire best ways to check this die. Houndoom's dead, he's poisoned instead of toxic. Mistakes were made. I Volt Switch out here, just get some damage off. End up doing quite a bit, 33% he disables, but I Volt Switch out. And bring in Vaporeon, because Vaporeon's not threatened by Corsola. He gets the burn off. He might have been expecting a physical Zeraora, which is fair. So I take a little burn damage, and here we're kind of in an awkward stalemate. We just go back and forth. I hard switch into Zeraora, predicting Ditto. Because again, I didn't want to Scald into a Ditto. He ends up Nightshading, which is 32%. Takes a little bit more chip. So now he's in a position where he has to... so I guess that was probably a misplay there. I have Thunderbolt. And if Volt Switch did 31, Thunderbolt... No, Thunderbolt doesn't kill, so never mind. I Volt Switch out to prevent Strength Sap from healing him all the way, so I go into my Pokemon with much lower attack, which is Vaporeon. And Strength Sap still heals half. So now we kind of go back and forth for a while. I fire off a Wish, because I want to heal up Zeraora, or is it Vaporeon? Go into Zeraora, who won't die from Strength Sap, obviously. But he gets more from Strength Sap, and so we kind of do this dance for a while, back and forth. I Volt Switch out to try and keep him low. Bring in Vaporeon. He gets up rocks to kind of stop me from switching around. So really important to note here, I am out of range of Nightshade. I did the calc before I did this play. I have enough HP to survive Burn and Nightshade, so I'm okay. I take the Wish. I get the Wish, so I'm back up to a healthy amount. Oh, at that point. So that was the point. That's why I didn't protect or anything there. Back up to 44. Here, do I go for the kill? No, I just keep wishing. So we just kind of keep going back and forth like this. I wanted to try and stay at as high of a health as I could, and I was always worried about Ditto switching in on a Scald. He gets the Disable, finally, from Cursed Body. But at this point, I can go ahead and... I think he's accepted that I'm going to eventually win this, and this keeps me pretty low. Hydreigon comes in here against Vaporeon. I don't want to switch anything in to Hydreigon, so I just go ahead and take the hit and faint. And then at this point, I can get in Zeraora. So Zeraora has a lot of special defense. It outspeeds Hydreigon. I can get a Calm Mind off, take a limited amount of damage from Dark Pulse, and then Aura Sphere KO. So Aura Sphere doesn't KO from this range. I actually need the boost, or it's not a guaranteed KO. So I go ahead and get the +1. Dark Pulse does 27, and from here I can kill with Aura Sphere. The end of this game is pretty much decided. As soon as I got that position with Zeraora coming in on Hydreigon, I was pretty much guaranteed to win. So this forces Ditto to transform into Zeraora, who's going to be weak to Landorus and has really nothing to hit Landorus for a lot of damage. I think there were outs for Unyeah at the end of the game, actually. A lot of them involved moving in Ditto on Vaporeon. If he had sub on Hydreigon, I think the Toxic would have got to him eventually, but he might have been able to position himself in such a way that I wasn't able to just set up with Zeraora. Maybe he gets an extra Dark Pulse off. I did have Ice Beam on Vaporeon, and I did click it, so I think that was a bit difficult of a position. So I think there is a scenario where this in-game works out for Unyeah, but I think you'd have to think about it a little bit for sure. As soon as Corsola died, I think this game was decided. So anyway, I pick up the kill here. I'm at +1/+1, and I also have, not base 40 HP or 48 HP. I have base 80 something HP. So more or less we're at, well, not equal health, but we're not at as dissimilar a health as it looks. So he has no move to kill me. Aura Sphere does 25. Aura Sphere does 43 to him, so you can see that my HP is about twice his, a little bit less. I assume he's Choice Scarf. So he gets the Aura Sphere off on me, but then Zeraora can come in and clean up. So a really interesting game, a lot of fun. A lot of mind games in the middle. I think I could have done a lot better. I think I kind of tripped over my feet with the Rillaboom, and I'll have to be more adamant about calking. It was a lot of fun. It was a really good match on, rooting for you the rest of the way. Same thing to everyone I play. We're in this weird collegiate quality wins, quality losses kind of setup where you're actively encouraged to root for everyone on your schedule because it makes your resume that much better for when it comes time to pick who makes the playoffs. So DSP Unyeah, let's get it, man. All right. That's it for this week. I'll see you guys next week.